It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Would you be my neighbor? Ty must put that black thing up there.
Yes, he did for Bible study last night. So
Oh.
take that glare off the screen.
Take that down for me when you get a minute. I like sun. Yeah, you know I'm a sun person. I got to see the sun. That's why I like this room. I like this room. Hey, everybody, welcome to another Power to the People show. As promised, in a few minutes, in a little while, I need you, first of all, I just need you to share and like, because in a few minutes, I have the person here who is one of the sponsors for the cannabis, legalization of cannabis in the city of Buffalo. I was with her when she was first talking about this years ago, and we were in the studio, and she said it, and I thought she was talking about medical. And she said, no, I'm talking about adult recreation. I said, what? We're going to be talking to the one and the only, to the now internationally famous majority leader of the state of New York. That's why I need you to get people on right now, because in a few minutes, she is going to be with us to talk about why she legalized it. And I'm going to tell you what just happened at a funeral. I'm going to tell you what just happened at a funeral. This has been a heck of a week. I mean a heck of a week. A lot happened. I wrote it down. Derek Chauvin, where were you at when the verdict came? I'll tell you where I was. I left City Hall. They said the verdict was going to be at 4:30. I left City Hall at 3:45 because I said to myself, not just to myself, if this verdict comes out where they say this man is not guilty, it's not going to be pretty. So I went home with my wife and the two youngest boys who are of African-American descent. And we sat together in the living room because we didn't even have to force them. They wanted to see. They have been connected at 12 and 13 years old. And my 13-year-old, my 12-year-old looks like a 10-year-old. But my 13-year-old is tall and looks older than 13. And so, of course, I am concerned about his well-being when he is outside. Not just from police, from a lot of things. I just finished another service, unfortunately, of a young man who was killed here in Buffalo, and that wasn't by police. And next week, I'm going to eulogize another young man that was killed in the city of Buffalo, and that wasn't by police. And I mourn with the family of the 18-year-old young lady who was killed, found in a car, and that wasn't by police. And we have to have as much attention on these homicides as we do on police shooting unarmed people of color.
Absolutely.
Because it's still death. It's still, this young man had a girlfriend who had a child who he was helping to take care of. That child now is without him. It's ridiculous. To have to watch a grandmother, my heart broke for her. To watch a grandmother who has to grieve, two grandmothers, their grandson, and a mother and a father. This is, and as I just told them, somebody, well, I just wanted to set the record straight, because they asked me why Pridgen why does Pridgen do so many of these homicide funerals? Oh, he getting paid. I don't get one red dime, nor does True Bethel, by the way. when there is a tragedy in our community, we do not charge. Now, if you fully grown and you don't go to church nowhere, you paying everybody else. But at the end of the day, when there's a tragedy, and this has been how I've been here 26 years, 20 of those years, this is what we've been doing, at least 20, of when there's a tragedy, a house fire, a homicide, something that you know a family is not prepared to pay the funeral home, and just, if you need me, we're there if we can do it. So, Derek Chauvin trial, guilty on all 3 counts. I knew it when they came back, and I'm not a lawyer, but I knew. I said they came back too quick.
Quickly.
I mean quick. A day? They got in that room and was like,
10 and a half hours.
Right. They got in that room and said, hey, what's the question? Let's eat lunch. They probably got some free lunches.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I said, because I think they said because of social distance and COVID, this was the first time the jurors were together the whole trial, and all they had to do was compare notes. So I think, like you, they were like, well, let's try to get dinner, breakfast, lunch, and then let them call it.
And they just did, I think that they did the right thing. I'm going to tell you this. Now, I told you I was a police officer in the Air Force, a lot different than being a police officer in the streets. But at the end of the day, you react. I've been in situations where you had to react. This was not a reaction. This wasn't a reaction. This was stone cold arrogancy. Like when you watching, it was 9 minutes or something, and you've got health professionals saying, you're killing them. And you still, with your glasses on your head, the more I watched it, the more disgusted I became. Your glasses on top of your head. Dante Wright's funeral.
Yeah.
That was sad. The one thing, and I didn't watch the entire eulogy, but that I appreciated that Al Sharpton said, he said, some people get confused peace and quiet and think that to have peace, I got to be quiet. Ooh, that was a good one.
That was a good one.
Peace and quiet. You don't know those two things. He said you all think that if we're quiet, we're peaceful. If we make no, it was just a wonderful piece. But he was stopped for an expired registration. And listen to this arrogant crap. Do you know what happened after they stopped him? What sparked this? They were going to ticket him for having an air freshener.
Oh, yes. Yep.
On his, that's just arrogance. Air freshener hanging from the mirror. Now we know that you can be, even here you can be ticketed. I think it's dumb.
I do too. A complete overhaul of the vehicle and traffic law.
Dumb. That you can, you want to just lay some charges on me. That's the arrogancy we talk about. MVP of, I'm going all over the place. I wrote it in the wrong place.
Go ahead.
It was supposed to be the MVP of the Derek Chauvin was the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, who prosecuted this thing and said, thank you to the people for your patience because we needed to pull together everything.
Well, since you're doing shout-outs, let me do a shout-out to the 17-year-old girl who recorded it.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
we can bring you up. We ready for you.
To the mic.
Yeah, you know you in the conversation. I present to you the one who is making sure that people who have low-level offenses and convicted, we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm not even going to talk about it. Crystal Peoples-Stokes. What were you saying over there?
Well, I was just really agreeing with Mr. Pope that I think the MVP is Darnella Frazier.
The one who...
The one who actually recorded, while she was crying, by the way, and asking them to stop. She was crying, but she videoed that. And that video literally set the world off.
Yes.
And quite honestly, I don't know how many times they showed it during the trial because I couldn't watch
It was hard.
the trial. But I'm sure they showed it multiple times. And
Yeah.
That young lady is like the mother of Emmett Till of our generation. She put something out that, just really changed the trajectory of this whole issue. And so I really do honor her. That's strength at 17 years old.
17 years old. What's my last note here before I start talking about weed?
Talk about it.
I said weed in the funeral, and May Bynum was on the front row going to talk about reefer. I said, they don't know nothing about no reefer. According to the New York Times, and I got another article here, an average of roughly 3 people a day were killed by police during the trial. Here's another paper, People magazine.
Scary.
During 3 weeks of testimony in the murder trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin in connection with George Floyd's death, at least 64 other people were killed at the hands of law enforcement.
Wow.
Now, some of them did have weapons. I want to be clear. The total was compiled by the New York Times, which based its analysis on news media reports. Some of those cases are now well known. I'm not going to read all of those. But the fact is that it continues, and that everybody doesn't get the press that some people do. So don't think that because there's no press that everything is okay. There is a problem with policing in America.
That's right.
Now, it could be in other places. I don't know about any, and it's worse in third world countries, but you expect for it to be worse in a third world country because of how corrupt the government usually is. But in a country in which we have rights, it has been so long. So when people say, do you think that this will change policing? No. I support the federal legislation that is going forward because I don't think that individual states will, by and large, do much about it. Now, the governor of our state, of course, says, hey, if you want these millions of dollars I got over here, you got to have a plan. But what I would have loved to see is someone in the governor's office who's going to ensure that police agencies are following the plan. I don't want to see these little plans go on the governor's desk and the cities get the money and then there's no follow-up, no accountability. Like one good thing I'll say about Buffalo is that Buffalo was working on police reform before
That's right.
it happened, before George Floyd.
That's right.
Absolutely.
We fought for the cameras, and we got the cameras.
Thank you, Mr. Council President.
Come on now. We fought for these things. We were already dealing with Carrier Horn. By the way, which if you Google her name right now, and she sent me the other day a Google search, and there was, 100 and something articles across this country, and that came out of Buffalo.
In the world, too.
All over.
Yes.
Came out of Buffalo. Mm-hmm. Now, are we there yet? No. Buffalo was working. We were working on this. But we still got a long way to go because there's still some arrogant police officers out there on the force. There's still some arrogant, narcissistic police officers who think that they are in a war instead of public servants. Some people are suggesting that you start across the country to stop saying police, start saying peace officers or something. It's going to take more than a name change, but what I do agree is that some professions have had to change what they call their employees so that it continues. You no longer get on the airplane and call them stewardess.
That's right.
Flight attendants.
Flight attendants.
You don't call people garbage men. Sanitation workers.
Yes.
So I do believe, and I do believe that there is value, and I won't say who suggested that to me. I saw some people on social media talking about it, but there was a news anchor who sent me a text, a white news anchor, talking about we need to change the whole. Folks know.
Yes.
Black people know and white people know. I'm just going to say this. Somebody called, maybe I shouldn't say. Yes, I am. I'm 56 years old.
Say it.
A suburban Caucasian pastor contacted me recently, wanted, we're going to have this conference and we want you to come and we're going to talk about about men and responsibility. And I hung up that phone, I looked at Mark and I said, I ain't going nowhere. Because where were you? Where were you? You all have black people sitting in your congregations.
Silent.
But the time when it came for us to work together, we ain't got to work together on the food pantry. We doing quite fine on our own. When we needed your voices, you were silent, and that's not all of them. Because there were people like Tommy Reed, my friend, Bishop Reed, who called and said, what can I do? He's like 80-something years old.
The Brett Cockrells of the world.
Breck deserves to be in the inner city.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you that. Because when it came time to speak up, Breck spoke up. And he got attacked. He got attacked on social media from some good-going church folks publicly telling him he was wrong. So I'm not there yet. Y'all pray for me. But I'm not at the kumbaya stage right now. We can't conference because you weren't there in conflict. All right,
That's a word.
I'm 56. I'm not holding this because I don't want to hold hands and sing "We Shall Overcome." No. Crystal Peoples-Stokes is here. I took care of everything? Oh no, last one. Makia Bryant. Did I say it right? Yeah. 16 years old. Columbus, Ohio.
Yes.
Now, let's just talk about this for a minute. Because what I've heard, of course, is both sides of the fence and people saying, well, she had a weapon. And we watched it yesterday.
Yes, we did.
From many angles.
Yep.
And slowed it down so that I could see. And she did indeed, from what it appears, had a knife. She was going toward the girl. But this is just my opinion. So de-escalation, probably the better thing from someone who is a police officer, would have been to get into her sight, but not into her sphere.
Right.
So you have to get into her sight, and one of the biggest things a police officer has is not his weapon, it's his or her voice.
It's communicate.
It is voice, right? Communicate. You gotta loudly, I know this from my training. You use your voice. You use everything you can before you use your service weapon. You find somebody who can control the situation, whatever you gotta do. Now, some will say, yeah, but the other girl could have got killed. What's your thought?
Well, she could have got killed, but she didn't. And the fact is that not only did the officer have a weapon, but the officer was supposedly trained. And as you said, their first job should be de-escalation.
Yes.
And you don't do that with a weapon, you do that with your voice. And there is no way that gentleman, or I don't even know if it was a woman officer or not.
No, it was a man.
There's no way he should not have been able to talk that girl down. At least she would have stopped long enough for them to remove the weapon from her without anybody being hurt. You don't have to shoot a kid because they have a knife.
Absolutely.
You don't.
Absolutely.
No excuse.
I'm now on the police side. Like I said, we've responded to things, and it's chaotic, even in the Air Force. Chaotic. You trying to figure out quickly. But the one thing we were trained, at least from being a police officer, law enforcement officer, and even in the Air Force, they're not called police. It's law enforcement, and so names changed over the years, is that the last thing you do is put your hand on your gun. That's my training. Now, my son asked me this question that others have said, why didn't he shoot her in the leg? That's not how police officers are trained. And this is why. You can't aim for you can aim, but if you aim for a smaller part of the body and you miss, and you have more likelihood of missing shooting an arm, for instance, that bullet will keep going. And when there are multiple people around, that means someone else can get hit. So when there's a lot of people around, you usually aim for center of mass to stop the threat. That's just police training all over to save the lives of other people when they're in the crowd. So
well, that kind of makes sense. That makes sense. But now we're talking about a 16-year-old young lady who you didn't even have to use your weapon for,
I agree.
period.
I agree.
You didn't even have to touch your
I
weapon.
wouldn't care if she was 16 or 26. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, as a human being, and you got to learn how to de-escalate.
You have to do that.
Well, and that's the other thing, and we kind of heard from this during police oversight meeting. Those officers also have tasers, and we're still seeing the first unction is grab the service weapon, not to the taser, or in the other instance where the cop confuses the two.
Do you think she could now?
That's
According to
impossible.
what I read today,
That's impossible. They don't even weigh the same.
she hollered, "Taser, because you're supposed to notify."
Mm-hmm.
So she hollered, "Taser, taser, taser." You think in the heat of the moment? No.
Absolutely not.
Do you think?
I know the difference, and I'm not an avid gun owner, of a taser and a Glock or a SIG. Like I'm a know by touch without even bringing it here what I'm grabbing.
But one is metal and one is plastic, right? I mean, so right there you have a different capacity.
And the other thing is usually the
different weight.
taser is on the other side of the body.
Right.
You have to wrench across. You got to wrench across. And she wrenched across and said, "Taser, taser, taser," and then pop. Okay, time to talk about Snoop Dogg is getting a lot of commercials. Snoop Dogg. No. I'm telling you. Snoop Dogg. Let me tell you why I'm bringing it up. I just saw a commercial with Snoop Dogg for something. No, this was something, about putting up. No, this is what I'm telling you, how many commercials. This was about an alarm company. And he's like putting up the alarm himself. And he's like, don't spend time putting up the alarm. Get this alarm. Let them put it. Did you see this? He said, let them put it up. And he's outside with a barrel, right? Now listen to this. He says, so that you got time to go outside and do your weeding. That's not funny.
I love that marketing.
But this man is making millions of dollars, and it wasn't legal when he was smoking. I know. Crystal Peoples-Stokes is with us. I was just doing a funeral, folks, and let me tell you what happened. Just in it real quick. This is what happened. So it's a young man who, homicide. I see Tim Newkirk is on the feed, but I ain't see him here today. I ain't see. Tim comes to every funeral. He knows everybody. So I start talking to these young people, because there's a lot of young people, of course, here. And I talked to them about the fact that the woman who was a sponsor of the cannabis, legalizing recreational use, adult use of cannabis, was going to be on my show in a few minutes, and you heard about two people going like this. So I was like, y'all want to clap. In the whole place, you would have thought.
Erupted.
They erupted, like, yes. They probably wanted an autograph from her. And I talked to them about, even though it is legalized, if you don't do the right thing, the people who are going to make the billions, if you all don't do the right thing, are still not going to be you.
That's right.
At the end of the day. But Crystal Peoples-Stokes, tell us about the legislation and what the right thing is.
Well, the right thing, first of all, is that it's legal only for 21-year-old responsible adults.
Come on and talk.
Responsible adults don't walk out in public smoking marijuana just because it's legal around other people who don't. That's irresponsible.
Come on.
Responsible adults will not get in the car with an open can of beer, and they will not get in the car smoking marijuana. Responsible adults won't do that. And responsible adults will not smoking it in places where it's not legal. And we all are under a clean air law. We've been under it for the last 10 years. Where you can't smoke a cigarette, you can't smoke marijuana either. So that's responsible. And so this law is for those folks who are responsible and over the age of 21. At the point that the governor signed the legislation, it was absolutely legal for a person 21 and over to have the availability of 3 ounces of marijuana
right away
on them. Absolutely.
We've got this picture up here. You see this picture?
Yes.
Can you tell us what was happening? So those of you who are on the radio, there is a picture that is all over the world of Crystal Peoples-Stokes in the assembly chambers with her hand up. What was that during the vote?
Well, that was immediately I was explaining my vote while the votes were being cast. And I was actually giving honor to God, which I always do, and honoring my daughter Rashawn Nicole King, who left me October the 19th. And at the same time, acknowledging the advocates who worked hard on this legislation as well.
So when did your hand go up? Was that during the whole speech?
No, that was at the very end. Like, you know,
But your favorite, you are known for this phrase.
to God be the glory.
So when I saw that, I said, I wonder if she was like, we're going to legalize weed, to God be the glory.
Well,
I was just wondering. I'm just wondering.
I can almost clap on that. We are going to legalize marijuana, but we're also going to stop the horrific destruction of black and brown people that we have had going on in this country for at least 4 decades. That destruction, quite honestly, arrests people for small, low levels of marijuana, sends them off to jail, they do their time, they get out, now they have a felony, and they can't live in public housing, can't
Yep.
get a job, can't
Yep.
get credit, can hardly get insurance, can certainly not get access to a federal Pell Grant to go to college. So there's all these things that you can't do. What do you end up doing? You recidivate. And when you go to jail, you're not getting reformed in jail. You're learning how to be a better criminal. And so then you come back into our streets. You have multiple years of being incarcerated. Your children have not been raised properly. Your grandmother's been trying to do it on her own. The community is destroyed. The people's lives are destroyed. And all of that while multiple billions of people still smoke marijuana, and most of them are white. And by the way, if you read the Wall Street Journal, you will know that New York State is the largest market of underground marijuana, not just in the country, but in the world. And so if we know that, why would we keep destroying people's lives around a plant and then send them back into communities that get destroyed? And unfortunately, you know, some of them end up here with funerals.
Yep.
And so at some point, you got to stop the madness. And for me, this was that opportunity to stop the madness. And I give God all the glory for being able to do that. Because 8 years ago when we introduced this, you know, it was probably slim to none that it would happen.
Well, I remember the first time a young man wanted to come to the council to talk about it, and nobody would file this thing, and I did. And some of my colleagues were like, "Are you crazy? Why would you file that?" And I said, "Because I want to hear his opinion." And I don't know, Mark, were you around when this guy used to come around? He looked like he was high all the time. He really did. And I think he admitted he smoked marijuana because of his he had epilepsy. And he said it helped, and he would come, and he looked like he had just smoked before he came in. And but I allowed him to come to the council, not because I necessarily agreed at that time, because his was just I did agree with the medical marijuana. I was on that from the beginning. When you told me about
with it, you weren't on it. You agreed.
No, I wasn't on medical
Let's
marijuana.
clarify.
But if I had to be on medical marijuana, I would be on medical marijuana. Right. If I was in pain, I'm not going to tell you the story. Now, there's a pastor on right now on our feed who just thanked you. Pastor Bruce Burton says, "Thank you, New York State Assembly Majority Leader, for explaining." So was it just so that people could walk around high all the time?
No. In fact, I don't even recommend that people do that at all. But the fact of the matter is that we know that they do. And since we know that, and we know that the majority of them are not black or brown people, then if you're not going to lock up the whole world, then stop locking us up.
There it is. So that's the big, keep going.
Stop locking us up, stop destroying our communities, and stop ending the lives of our children. We all know, social science will tell you, when parents are incarcerated, it has an impact on children. It's a residual impact that impacts them when they go to school, how they interact in the community. All these things end up costing more. You will note that there's a correlation between the growth in family court and the number of people that were incarcerated during mass incarceration. There's a direct correlation, because when people are incarcerated, what happens to their children? A lot of them end up in foster care. Some of them end up with their grandmother. A whole new scenario had to come out, kinship care, meaning people were taking care of relatives of children after their relatives were incarcerated. And so this society has created exponentially the cost of government increasing, needing to deliver services because you decided to lock people up for low levels of marijuana.
What's the difference between, because this is the other side of the argument, so do we now legalize everything where people of color are disproportionately charged with?
No, because this legislation doesn't deal with racism.
Okay.
I mean, that's a whole nother issue. It doesn't stop people from doing their job from a racial lens. That's a whole nother issue. I don't suggest that people use anything necessarily that alters their mind. I do know people who have lived their entire life using marijuana, educated their children, sent them to college, are retired now, and maybe still do. And they're okay to they don't have a problem. So to suggest that because some people have a problem with it when they use it, that no one should have access to it is inherently unfair, and I think that it needed to be changed.
Okay, so now that it is legal, and I'm gonna bring both sides of this argument to this table. Well, this is not an argument right now. This is a question. I didn't know they had gummy bears. I didn't know they had in a package.
Yes.
Like for real. This is I saw it the other day. I didn't see it. I saw a picture of it. Let me be clear. Let me just say right now.
It wasn't in your
It wasn't in my possession. Somebody sent me a picture.
Well, there are some states that when they legalized, there were 14 other states that legalized before we did. They did use the packaging that had little gummy bears on it. That will be illegal in the state of New York.
Thank you.
You cannot make an edible that looks like a child wants to have it.
And
it has to be labeled on the package exactly what it is, how much THC is in it, how much CBD is in it, which are two different chemicals that's in it, but it all comes from the same plant.
So in New York State, no, because I fought hard to get
no gummies.
All of that taken out of stores when they were selling suckers that look to little kids that look like marijuana. That will be illegal to sell the gummies in a bag because the bag looked like a regular candy. And I thought to myself, what would happen if somebody has that at their house? A kid gets into it, it could be a death sentence for a child.
That's a problem. That's why we made that illegal in New York State.
What else is different in the New York State law than you see in most states?
There are a lot of things that are different. The biggest thing that's different is we looked at legalizing from an equity aid lens as opposed to revenue. So everybody else really went because they wanted to get the revenue so they can invest in their communities. Well, we went because we wanted to change the structure of how it was impacting black and brown people's lives. And we also wanted to eliminate the records that they already have. So in 2019, an ounce and under. This legislation, 3 ounce and under, your records can be expunged or removed or destroyed, whatever terminology you want to use for it. No more record. And then the other thing that we did that is unlike any other state is that we required by statute that 40% of every dime the New York State collects gets invested into the lives of the people who suffered from the mass incarceration.
Now, what does that mean? What does that mean?
That means that it could be different in Utica than it is in Rochester, than it is in Buffalo, or the Bronx. It depends. So if you have say, Broadway Fillmore area, where a lot of people may have records as a result of being incarcerated persistently around this issue, you can see that there's a lot of needs there. The people have needs, the children have needs, the infrastructure has needs, so there needs to be reinvesting into that community. What is it that the people need? I'm not sure, but I know that the Office of Criminal Justice Services and the Office of Court Administrations know who these folks are. What are the implications? It could be something like just taking lead out of people's houses that impacts children in their capacity to learn. It could be that grandmother, took care of 2 generations of her children, great-grandchildren and her grandchildren, but her gutter is falling. It could be that, people need to have access to being homeowners. It could be that people need to have financial services education. It could be that a person who doesn't have a job needs to be trained to get a job and to have an opportunity to work. So it depends on what the people need. But one thing is clear. In all of the communities that have been impacted this way, they all look the same. It could be that we need to do a better job with trauma-informed care. It could be that we need to do a better job with restorative justice in school systems. It depends on what the communities and the people need. And it's a lot. So for that purpose, we put together what's called, there are 2 boards.
Okay.
The one that's important to that 40% allocation of resources is the advisory board.
Okay.
It's a 16-member board, 13-member board.
So I see you got a poke with you too that tells you just look over and ask.
7 of them are appointed by the governor, 3 of them are appointed by the Senate, and 3 of them are appointed by the Assembly. And the other board is the control board. That one has the governor appointing 3, the legislature appointing 2, 1 by the Assembly and 1 by the Senate. Herein is a real big difference in what anybody else has done across the nation as well, is that we've created an agency, a state agency, the Office of Cannabis Management, that is not under the sole control of the executive branch of government.
And my
You
question
have
was
a-
about to be, what makes this different than when they said the lottery money was going to go to the schools and it was just a kind of a balancing act?
Well-
This is different.
40% of the dollars are going to reinvest in the communities, 40% is going to invest in education, but there's a maintenance of effort. So wherever you are with education in the state budget, you cannot supplant that with these dollars. You got to add value to
That's
it, not
the
take away
question.
from it. That's in the legislation.
Because when the lottery came out and y'all out there playing the box hit and all that, it didn't do a whole lot of difference. This is different.
So,
this is different.
But understanding that, you cannot allow that to happen again.
Yep,
and so
exactly.
that's one of the reasons why the legislation didn't get passed in 2019, is because we couldn't get in statute things like maintenance of effort for education dollars, maintenance of effort for investment in communities, and added value of 40% into the people's lives who suffered. Only black and brown people generally are the ones who suffered. So it's not going to be hard to find who,
also about
who they are.
enforcement and what we talk about enforcement. I got some people talking to you on social media. Jeanette Angel asked the question, are there any grants for African Americans to open a dispensary?
Actually, there is a possibility for grants for African Americans to open a dispensary. The regulations for how those dispensaries will look will happen sometime between the control board getting set up and their implementation of the regulation. But here's another thing we did in the legislation, is that there are 10 registered organizations who actually right now operate medical marijuana facilities in the state of New York. We fought them off for 4 years to keep them from getting access to additional sites. Even though they kept trying to say they wanted it for medical, no, they didn't. They wanted it for adult use, and we fought that off. So now they can get access to adult use, but they can only get 2, and it's going to cost them money to do it, a lot of money. And that money will be used to invest in the equity opportunities for people who want to be in business. And the goal is 50% equity. So 50% equity businesses can be supported with the dollars that will come from the existing registered organizations.
And people shouldn't just think, and by the way, I'm not, for y'all go out there and say, Pridgen was pushing, no, it's the law. I want you to know the difference.
It's the law.
I want you to understand, because it's not just about dispensaries. There are supportive businesses, and probably the people who are going to make the most in the beginning are those who are the distributors or growing. Now, there's an article right now about Canada, and they did, it wasn't the dispensaries that were making the money, it was the people who are growing. But this is what I read in the article. Now, the market in Canada is suffering. Have you seen any of that?
What I have seen of recent is that just recently, for the first time ever, and they've been legal for, I want to say, about 3 or 4 years, the legal market is making more than the illicit market. So that took them some time to do. And part of their problem is they were not prepared with a product. So they couldn't even get started right away because you could open a business and then there was no one who could provide you with a product to sell.
You ain't had no
Herein
refund.
lies again the difference, that we are allowing our existing ROs to be the ones who provide the product for the dispensary for the young lady who just asked. Maybe it will come from them, or maybe it'll come from some of the 200 black farmers who are ready and able to begin operating in this business.
Now, this is, and I know your purpose of this was not for profit and it was about the legal end, number one, I think you told me, right?
Well,
do you think
know there's a profit that's attached to it. So
Exactly.
Take some of that profit and invest in people, and take some of that profit and invest in people who want to be in business, who are not necessarily in a position to be capitalized to do it.
Gotcha. Do you think the same thing that has happened in Canada could happen in New York State with
I do
other
not.
states legalizing?
I do not. I think one of the things about not being first is you get to learn from what other people have done, how they've done it wrong, and how we can do it better. And I think our legislation is crafted to ensure that it does get done better. Generally, when people legalize, it takes them 18 months to 2 years before they're even ever ready to let a dispensary open. We're in New York. I don't think it's going to take us that long. I would say a year, maybe 18 months.
Are there any safeguards that would someone could be charged for for instance, I'll just make it real plain. Making a batch of brownies and giving it to somebody and it has cannabis in it and they didn't know.
Well, if they didn't know that it was in there and you gave it to them, that's a violation. That is not responsible. This law was not written for you.
See, I'm asking all the questions. Ross says on social media, tell the community why going slow, oh, she just did, was best for us. Our black and brown legislators protected us. But he says something earlier about he says the non-black assemblywoman told the assembly that marijuana was already legal for white people. They are not arrested and convicted. Was that your co-sponsor?
It's true, yeah. Liz Kruger, she probably did say that because it is actually true. As a matter of fact, quite a few of my colleagues said that.
That it was already legal for other folks. That's because you also don't have police pulling over other folks in other areas. And if they do, in other areas where you got a family attorney and you're not being and no disrespect to public defenders because they got a hard job, but when you're not being represented by a public defender and you got a family attorney who knows somebody and knows somebody knows the law and gets you off and you never suffer the same way.
Exactly. And by the way, I mean, at least the last 3 presidents, I won't count for the last one we just had, but they actually acknowledged that they smoked marijuana and they became president of the United States. That's Clinton, Bush, and Obama.
But didn't Clinton say he didn't inhale?
Yeah, well, that just means I smoked. It didn't,
So you could.
You got to infer from that one.
Everybody.
It was still not comfortable.
Clinton was.
I haven't done a disclaimer on this show in a long time. The views of this show are those who are speaking it. It is not necessarily of the station or of our sponsors. Speaking of the station, as we continue this conversation, big congratulations to Sheila Brown, the owner of this station, who an RFP is going forward to the Common Council that she will remain as a renter on Michigan, but in an historic location in the African American corridor.
That is so great. That is just so powerful.
The reason we're able to bring this information to our community like this and people know the real deal is because Sheila had a dream. I have a dream that one day we would have a radio station in the city of Buffalo owned by a person of African descent that I went to high school with. Bennett, mine's forever. Keep going. Tell us what else you need us to know on this.
Tigers.
Oh, yes. That's right. You're a Tiger, right?
Yes.
Yes, Bennett.
I'm a Bennettonian as
I used to wear a tie to school and carry a briefcase. Let me tell you, I didn't know so many people indulged in cannabis. Now that it's legal, like people telling me I'm like getting my heart broke a little bit. I'm thinking that, and they're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, So you can't go out and buy it like from a guy on the street still, or can you?
Well, it's illegal to sell cannabis in the state of New York. It's illegal to sell it because we don't have dispensaries open yet. We don't have cultivation sites and all that. But in 18 months, that will all be legal.
Can you give it?
But if you get it right now, you can have it because it's not a legal product, illegal product. So you can have 3 ounces, period, no matter where you get it from. Now, if you're caught while you're buying it from somebody, that's illegal.
Come on now, we're bringing the knowledge. It's still illegal.
Responsible adults won't do it that way.
Okay.
If they want to have this product, they will do it in a way that no one knows it but them and the person they're getting it from.
Can you go to Pennsylvania?
No, because you can't carry it over state boundaries. It's still a federal. At the federal level, it's still illegal. So don't go to Massachusetts and think it's okay just to bring it back. It's really not.
You teaching today. This is why we got you here. You teaching today. So if I get it from now, Pennsylvania is right next to us.
Yeah, but so Pennsylvania is not legal.
Oh, it's not.
Pennsylvania is not legal yet.
Jersey
is legal.
So can I go to Jersey? Me, hold on, everybody. Not me. I want to get this right. I should ask this a different way. Can a person go to Jersey where it's legal, buy marijuana, and come back into New York where it's legal?
No. Well, no, they still can't because it's crossing borders.
Yeah, but where do you get me? Do you get me, if you get me in New York, it's legal. If you get me in Jersey and I've got under
Well,
the ounces?
if you didn't see me buy it in New Jersey and I arrive in New York with it and it's less than 3 ounces, I'm legal.
Okay, well, y'all tell me how much is 3 ounces. Give me an example of what 3 ounces is. And I think, Mark, you've given me this education before. I don't know how you know it.
I
but
don't know
wanna
how 3 ounces look.
No, I mean, he knows ounces.
Yeah, but I don't know how 3 ounces look.
How does 3 ounces look, somebody? Tell me what, because we need to educate our community.
That's a 2-ounce bottle.
Give me that. Let me see that. I'm going to show it to YouTube.
Fluid ounces.
It's how many?
So like a Ziploc bag.
A Ziploc bag full of weed is 3 ounces?
No.
Not full?
It can't be full.
Well, you want?
How do people know then if we can't
Okay,
even,
this is 2 ounces right here.
Liquid.
oh,
So, but if it was a little bit taller, it would
that's
be
3
3
ounces.
Yes.
Well, in my day, that was a nickel bag. That was
No,
yes,
I
it
don't think
was. It was a church envelope, and you know it. Remember those little? No, y'all ain't gonna.
I don't know it.
I'm not talking about the St. Luke envelopes, not the long ones. I'm talking about the little marijuana used to come in the little thing, huh? The change envelope. Come on, Leah, you know.
Be specific, sir.
Is that
I don't think you should be discussing.
I'm just telling the truth because I don't want our people out there with 5 ounces because they didn't know ounces.
Well, by the way, the law does provide for people after the dispensaries are open to grow 6 plants at home.
So not now.
Not now. Not until the young lady who just asked the question gets her dispensary open can people begin growing their own plant. And they can grow 3 immature plants and 3 mature plants.
Okay, now if we can't do nothing else, you go to people's house, they be growing something. I don't want to go to somebody's grandmother's house and what? Hi, Granny. I'm just over here growing this weed.
By the way,
A small Ziploc.
by the
you
way,
said.
I have to tell you that people already do grow it.
Do they?
Yes, they do, and they don't all look like us, but they do grow it, and I know they do. And they complained that why the bill would only allow them to grow 6.
Oh, they were complaining
when they're used
about
to
it.
growing 12.
Oh, so India says it's a small Ziploc bag. Now we got something about to be on the screen. That's 3 ounces.
Oh, no, I'm working on it.
All right. So regardless, you need to know it because you got to stay within the law. This is what I just preached. Do it right. Don't go out here when this is fully, and I'm still going to skirt the law. It's still, there are boundaries on this law. Tell me about pushback. Where's the pushback coming?
Well, you're always going to get pushback from law enforcement. So the first thing that they raised is they wanted to do a demonstration project. They wanted to, once it becomes legal, just be able to pull people over and test them. Well, there is no test to tell whether or not you're impaired. There's a test to tell whether it's in your system, but it can't tell whether you're impaired because if you smoked it and you smoked it 2 weeks ago, it is still there, but that doesn't mean that you're impaired. And so our pushback was, okay, we'll do a demonstration project, but let's do it in your neighborhood where only white people live.
Whoa.
And they, of course, pushed back on that one. So then we came up with, well, let's do a real study. No one has ever studied this. 14 states and countries have legalized marijuana, but no one has studied what is the impairment level of THC. No one knows that. So in this legislation, we're actually going to study that. We're going to use existing research institutions that we have right here in the state of New York. By the way, UB runs a fabulous one right over on Main Street, where they can do a study where people will come in and they will figure out at what level are you
they got to
impaired.
get high.
Well,
What?
Impairment is
I
different.
ain't gonna tell y'all what's going on
Impairment
behind
is
the curtain.
different.
Okay, but they still have to. They got to do something. They got to do a couple gummies, or they got to do
Well,
something.
they probably will test it from all angles, not just from smoking, but from edibles as well.
Okay.
Or tinctures or anything that, because by the way, there are like 500,000 people almost in the state of New York who are using medical marijuana as
Okay.
we speak. So you do need to know what
agree.
impairment levels are. Just think about this. When alcohol was transferring from being illegal to legal, it took almost 10 years to come up with a breathalyzer.
Okay.
A long time. So for law enforcement to insist that they have to have a way to determine whether or not a person is impaired from cannabis is totally unfair, and I think they really just wanted to find another way to stop black people.
Let me know when
so
you're
it's
ready
like,
for the
no.
graphic too.
Okay. Let me ask you this before, because I'll forget. I'm 56 years old. If a police officer pulls over someone and suspects that they are impaired by cannabis use, will they be doing the same test that they do for alcohol impairment?
No, because they actually can't test you for cannabis impairment. They can test you for cannabis because they can test hair.
Yeah, but if I
they
I
can't
smoked
tell
it a
that you're
week
impaired.
before, so if you pull me over and my eyes are glassy and all that, there's nothing they can do.
Well, the existing law says if officer can pull you over, if they think you're impaired, they can arrest you. No matter what, you could be on opioids.
Got it.
You could be on something that come out of the drugstore. If they think you're impaired, they can stop you, pull you over, and arrest you. Then, of course, they have to test you, and they have to end up in court sometime. When they end up in court, there's going to be no way that they verify that you are impaired from marijuana because there's no way to test it.
Oh my goodness! Here's the picture: 3 ounces.
All right, hold on. It's actually, I think, 2.
What is you all happy over there for? He all you seen him that happy? He ain't that happy in church. Is this 3 ounces? Oh, look. So this all of it. What up to here?
That's 2.
This is 2 ounces.
Yes.
Now, and I'm not kidding you. I'm really asking the questions because I don't know. How many how many cigarettes or is this?
So, ounce is what, 28 grams?
Hey, back here. I mean, is this like 5? Is this 6?
I don't know. It looks like about 10, I guess.
10? See, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm getting the education, and other people out here are getting the education because it's very important for you to know. I'm trying to keep you out of jail. What else you want us to know in your last 3 minutes?
Well, I do want you to know again that this is really an opportunity for responsible adults to use a product that the vast majority of citizens in the state of New York clearly already use. Again, you know, Wall Street Journal says that we're the largest market in the world. Multiple billions of dollars a year in this product get transferred, you know, and so it's here. This law allows it to treat us more fairly as black people and brown people, and it also allows for the opportunity for us to be in business. I want to say one other thing that I think is critically important.
Okay.
When the state allowed for medical marijuana, there was only one registered organization of black people. They came out of Syracuse. Their business has been sold twice since then, but they're still in that investment stream. Mm-hmm. So now companies from other places around the country have bought them multiple times, but they're still in that investment stream. So what they've been able to do is create a system of generational wealth for themselves and their families. This is an opportunity for people to begin that process of identifying generational wealth. Because it's a multiple billion-dollar industry underground, when it becomes above ground, people who are highly capitalized are going to aggressively go after people who are already in the business. So if you get into business day one with the state of New York, and you only hold a business for 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, somebody might want to buy it from you for a lot of money. The way you sell it is to maintain yourself in that investment stream. And then now you're creating generational wealth for you and yours. Because at the end of the day, this is a capitalistic country. Big pharma, big pharmaceuticals, big banks, they're going to gobble this up because there's a lot of money to be made in it. So find your space in there right away.
Where do you put your money? Can you put it in the bank?
You can put it in a state chartered bank or in a credit union. You cannot put it in a federally insured bank because they won't take it yet.
So you can put it in a credit
That's
union.
temporary because Congress just passed a bill last week, and I believe the Senate will do likewise. And I think the
You think
president
you
is
think
smart.
cannabis is going to be legal in the United States?
I do, absolutely.
I've been told to announce that the clothing pantry of True Bethel is reopening on Wednesday, the 28th, 10 till 2. It will be outdoors. The garage will be open. You still have to wear your mask. We need you to come. I've got a store full of clothes for people who need them. The need, not the greed. And it might not even be for you. You can come and get it for a family and take it to somebody who needs it. That's the 28th. And then don't forget, we always have our food pantry here at True Bethel. You can call the church, get more information. We're feeding, we're clothing, we're offering Christ, we're doing the job. Tim Newkirk says, I want to let you know that 12-year-old Jalen Griffin, who has been missing, will be in the People magazine. I did a full interview of his missing persons case. We're still looking for a 12-year-old, folks. 12 years old.
Please, Jesus.
Jalen Griffin. And I want to thank Tim for his work on that. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. There are 10 different types of licenses that will be available to you. I would suggest that you either contact our office or get on a list. We've got a additional expungement clinic coming up on Saturday. We also have a Cannabis 104 coming up May the 22nd. You'll hear more information about that. That's where you can find out how to get in business, how to be in business. This will be the fourth one we've done. And because of that, I know that Buffalo, Black Buffalo, is ready to go when the licenses are available.
Well, a young lady broke my office the other day, and it was because I helped. She's in healthcare. She had a low-level conviction, and she couldn't get a job. I helped. I didn't get her a job. She got herself the job. I connected her. She got the job. She's been working for a couple of years now. She wrote me and sent me a copy of her credit score that was tanked. And what was her credit score? Like 700 and something.
Yes.
She also is now working with Nan, I think, to buy a new house with NACA in order to buy Nan is Al Sharpton, to buy a new house. And then she mentioned about, and I think I will be eligible to get my record expunged. Like, everybody in the office was so happy, and I talked about that today at the funeral, because I want to see success, folks. Let me tell you why I'm having these conversations, and some would ask, why would you bring on somebody, you're talking about cannabis, and y'all joking about it? Listen, it's the law, and the law has been there for years that disproportionately affected, as you heard, go back and watch this broadcast if you missed it, people of color. And I took a class that was sponsored by the Roundtable, the Racial Equity Roundtable, in which they talked about legislation, and it was for legislators. And they said, you should always, every law you write, you should ask the question, how does it affect individual groups, and especially groups of color?
Exactly.
You can ask that. Now, I'm not going to get into another discussion and take it left, but the point is, when you have a group that is disproportionately being affected, it doesn't mean that next week that cocaine should be legal and next week this should be legal and that. No, but there are certain things, and if that we have to be able to look through. And I'm okay. When I left that class, I was like, you know what? She's right. It is okay, and it's okay to admit when we are disproportionately affected, like police reform.
Yes.
All right, that's important.
Yes.
HOBSON'S, the Doctor of Dry Cleaning, 874 East Delavan Avenue. They're the ones that put us on the air in the first place. Over a decade on radio. HOBSON'S, the Doctor of Dry Cleaning. Please take your clothes over there. They do a great job. Don't go driving out to the suburbs. The same chemicals. Go to HOBSON'S, the Doctor of Dry Cleaning. Do you take your clothes over there?
I absolutely do.
Oh, I wasn't asking you. I wouldn't put you on the spot
right now.
Do you really?
Yes.
Are you a weekly person, or do you wait till you pile it all up?
I try to do bi-weekly. Yeah.
My stuff be so heavy that I'm scared my closet gonna fall with it. I save it all up, huh? You no, you
that's
don't.
Why you're so heavy.
Right. Brian K. Lewis Funeral Homes in your hour of need. 347 Peckham, 2528 Bailey, and 1275 Sycamore in your hour of need. The place to call, Brian K. Lewis Funeral Home. Listen, folks, it's been great. I got off the air on time today. Once again, congratulations, Sheila Brown and the whole family over there at the power station. Congratulations. Thank you to the administration for having the foresight to put out the RFP, working with the council, and it is happening. That corridor, folks, is breathing.
Yes.
Color Musicians Club getting ready to add on its breathing.
Elevator.
Yeah,
Yes.
an elevator. Listen, people will be coming to Buffalo not to just go to Canal Side.
That's
You're
right.
going to have to stop in the African American Heritage Corridor. And that's when government works together with people, it works. Until next week, power to the people.
Power.